Cause and effect. It's something that we learn at a very young age. We learn that there is an action, it causes another action. As a matter of fact, it's almost like we come out of the womb understanding cause and effect. For example, a child learns from the moment they're born that if I cry, then the parents will either feed me or change my diaper. And so, whenever they're hungry, they scream. I have 4 children. Trust me, they scream. Whenever they have a dirty diaper, they scream. Why? Because they understand that in order to get the effect that they want, changing of the diaper, more food, they need to have a cause. They need to create the cause through their scream, cause and effect. You see this not just in the babies, you see this all over the world. You see this every time you drive. If you do not press on the brake, you will hit the car because there will always be a consequence to your actions, cause and effect. It is the way that the world functions. It is infused into this space that we call the cosmos. God infused it because there's a part of it that is deeply, incredibly holy. But what's fascinating is that most of us do not understand that cause and effect is something that is not just a truth in the physical world, it's also a truth in the spiritual one. And let me say it in a little bit of a different way. Our actions have consequences, for better or worse. Whether for blessing or for a burden, our actions have consequences. And if we try to deny this principle that is infused in all of creation, we will be less than who God has made us to be. We will be caught hurting ourselves and a lot of other people along the way if we do not understand that our actions have consequences, that cause and effect are indeed real. I came to the text this morning in Galatians chapter 6. And that's what prompted all of this wrestling in my own heart and my own life on cause and effect. In Galatians chapter 6, we're getting to the very end of this book. And usually at the end of a book, Paul decides to give some of these last instructions to really drive home his point throughout this book, to really make sure that his churches, that his people understand the significance of what has been said. And in chapter 6, verse 7 of the book of Galatians, Paul begins with a strong exhortation. He says, do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. Do not be caught off guard with this truth. He says, God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Notice this. He says, don't be deceived. God can't be mocked. He can't be played for a fool. And then this is what he says. God created things with a cause and effect. Your actions have consequences. Or another way of saying it, a man reaps what he sows. If he reaps a seed, if he puts the seed into the ground, if he tills the ground and puts the seed inside, if he reaps, if he sows it, he will be that will be what he reaps. The fruit of the seed will be what he reaps. And you can't change this cause and effect. You can't plant no seeds. You can't sow any seeds and expect to reap a harvest. But what seeds that you actually sow, what seeds you actually put into the ground, will dictate what it is that the ground produces. Cause and effect. Let me read it again. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. And then he goes on in verse 8 and says this. Whoever sows to please the flesh, whoever plants seeds that serves their flesh, that serves their desires, that serves them, well, from the flesh, you will reap destruction. Why? Because that's the fruit of the flesh. And then he says this, whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. This is the important principle he's bringing out. Cause and effect. The question is what are the seeds of your cause? Because if you can figure out what the seeds are that you're planting, you will know the effect. You will know the fruit that you reap. And a lot of the times we see this in the physical realm, but we deny it happens in the spiritual realm. Let me give you an example. Over behind me, I have a stack of books. And right now they are a stack. They are a tower. But if I take a book and I throw it, the stack falls. Why? Because it's predictable. The throwing that book will cause that reaction that we don't have to guess. None of you are sitting here surprised that the books fell over when I threw the other book at it. Because the action has a predictable fruit. And the same is true if you are serving your flesh. The fruit is predictable. Paul says it's destruction. But the same is true as if you are serving, if you are fighting for, if you are sowing seeds of the Spirit. It's predictable. It will produce life. And then Paul says this in verse 9. So let us not become weary in doing good. For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And let me tell you, sometimes doing good is exhausting. Sometimes I get tired of it. Sometimes I just don't know why I keep showing up and doing the same things over and over and over and over, and I see no result. Sometimes I do this with my prayer time. I struggle with it. Because I will come to the Lord and I'll be wrestling with an issue, and it will literally, the issue will go on for years. And finally I get to this frustrating point when I say, Lord, what's even the point of showing up here? Now I know there's a lot of theological issues with that question. He's not a Santa Claus. He doesn't just give you what you want. But there's a part of me that gets weary of just doing the good thing because I'm waiting for the fruit. It just doesn't seem to come. And yet Paul says, don't become weary of doing good. Don't become weary of doing good. Why? Because in the proper time, it will reap the predictable harvest. Don't give up. Therefore, he says in verse 10, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers. He says, let us do good. Let us practice doing good, sowing seeds of good, actually sowing fruit of the Spirit to all people, regardless if they're enemies or friends. Why? Because the seeds of good will produce a predictable fruit. They will produce life for you and for everyone around you. My challenge for you this week is to wrestle with your past, the decisions that you've made, the actions that you've done that have effects in the present to you and the people around you. But also to reflect on what seeds that you truly want to plant, that you truly want to sow. But my encouragement, like Paul's, is this. Don't get weary of doing good, because it has a predictable fruit. Love you guys. Have a good week.